All right. Hello, everyone. Good evening. We'll go ahead and begin our board meeting tonight, not November.
Not yet. Oh, there you go.
October 19th at 6:30. Katie, will you call the roll?
Dr. Magulius,
Here.
Mrs. Reynolds,
Here.
Mrs. Johnson,
Here.
Mr. File,
Here.
Mr. Yatoni,
Here.
Mr. Goebel,
Here.
Mr. Carley.
Here.
All right. Are there any visitors here who would like to address the board? I don't think so. I see our usual gang back there. Okay. Let's see, approval of consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda, approval of minutes, and approve disposal of verbatim closed session minutes of the October 15th, 2018 meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Don.
Second.
Thank you, Amy. Call the roll?
Dr. Magulius,
Yes.
Mrs. Reynolds,
Yes.
Mr. Yatoni,
Yes.
Mr. File,
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Goebel,
Yes.
Mr. Carley.
Yes.
All right, we'll move on to financial reports. Mr. McDermott, will you cover the investment report, please?
So you can see in your packet, no real news on interest rates. They remain low. The variance for the month, the regular operating expenses and payroll expenses, which normally average about $1.6 million a month, and the receipt of our fifth distribution of real estate tax revenue from both Sangamon and Christian counties was a little over $4.9 million, so that's why there's a positive $4 million variance in balances from August to September.
Any questions on the investment report? Okay. Is there a motion to approve bills, payroll, and treasurer's report?
So moved.
Thank you, Bill.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Reynolds. And are there any questions on the bills? Okay. Hearing none, we'll go ahead and call roll.
Mr. Carley,
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson,
Yes.
Dr. Magulius,
Yes.
Mr. File,
Yes.
Mr. Goebel,
Yes.
Mrs. Reynolds,
Yes.
Mr. Yatoni.
Yes.
Okay, and then a report on year-to-date fund summary.
On the fund summary, I left a couple pages at your place tonight, which shows numbers that were budgeted in each of the funds, as well as what is projected after the first 3 months of the fiscal year. And you can see that we're tracking pretty close to budgeted numbers after the first 3 months. So there was really not a lot of change from what we expected at the beginning of the year with some of our expenses. Revenue, as we had mentioned before, we believe is going to be the issue this year, and not so much on the expense side. But on a positive note, another item that I left at your place tonight. 2 weeks ago, our cooperative insurance group that we belong to, and that I also chair that committee for the last 15 years, we announced a $1 million return of surplus to our districts. Our share of that $1 million is a little over $21,000 for this year. That's the second return of surplus we've received from our cooperative in the last 2 years. Last year, we received close to $29,000 in a return. So obviously that was unexpected. And then one other note, Mr. Cox and I will begin to work on the 2020 levy for receipt in FY22 here this month.
Okay, are there any questions on the year-to-date fund summary? All right, thank you, Mr. McDermott. Okay, in your packet, there are administrator reports and director's reports. Those were included over the weekend for you to look at. Are there any questions or comments on those reports? Is there anything you'd like to see added to them or anything at all?
I thought they were very informative.
Good,
I appreciate them very much.
good.
One note, we will be, we're working on we send out the weekly COVID dashboard that goes out on Fridays that you've seen via email, social media. We're looking we have a very in-depth spreadsheet. It's probably too in-depth for the general public, so what we're looking at doing is pulling some pieces of information from that does get updated daily that we'll provide as a link to that dashboard we send out on Fridays, and people can check that whenever they would like. But one of the things we will be adding to that is the percentage of students who are in person versus remote. That is a piece of data it's becoming more and more pertinent to conversations we're having both internally and externally in the district.
Good. Okay. If none on those reports, then we'll ask Mr. Cox to go over his superintendent's report.
Well, for some celebrations, we have made 2 full weeks and we're starting number 3 of hybrid. Let me tell you, it's tough, but it's been a good celebration. And I'll not belabor the point because we have space on the agenda to talk about the hybrid instruction and have discussion and questions, but I do just want to recognize the hard work of everybody inside the district and outside our community, our parents that's helped us and helped be adaptable and flexible, and as well as inside the district, our teachers, our administrators, all of our support staff have just been doing really incredible work to continue to meet the challenges that we're faced with. This week marks Principal Appreciation Week, and this rolls nicely into that. The job of the principal is really incredibly challenging, and this year it's more challenging than ever. And I want to thank publicly our principals for their dedication, their innovation, and just really being student-centered leaders. They want to do the best they can for our students, so thank you. Each month, with everybody working incredibly hard, each month I feel like I want to just highlight a couple different employees and employee groups that really do some things behind the scenes that people may not realize. And this month it's our school nurses. With going back, it's been a tough job no matter what, but going back now to our hybrid instruction, they're doing some things and doing a lot of work that nobody would have ever imagined a year ago that we would be doing. A point of note, our nurses are the ones doing our contact tracing by and large with the assistance of their principals. That's no easy task, let me tell you, on that, and especially when it's time to make the phone calls home. So they're doing really incredible work meeting the health needs of our students and our staff. I will also want to thank the Illinois Association of School Boards for donating 2,500 masks to Rochester schools. And we had some help from our friend Dr. Bertrand. He helped us with that as well. So we sent out a nice thank you, and we'll be getting those masks out to our students. And also congratulations to Cheryl Flynn and Stephanie Ziedler for writing and securing a $2,000 grant for STEM education. A couple of items that have come up today that was not on your report. One of the more serious in nature. The Capital Area Career Center has had enough COVID positives that they have to close down the in-person instruction until November 4th. So during that time, until then, CACC will not be going in person until the 4th of November. That's correct, Brent, Jamie, the 4th? Okay. The other one, not nearly as serious, and we can talk about later. We have your Gmail accounts set up, the Rochester3A.net Gmail account set up, so if you need any assistance, we can talk about that later this evening, and we'll start using those. Free lunch and breakfast program. The good news is the free lunch and breakfast program has been extended through the remainder of the school year, so that'll be something we'll be able to offer our families through the entire year. We did run into a little technical issue with that. Because of the way we're set up here at Rochester, we have 2 different food contracts. We're not on the National Lunch Program here at this building. The other buildings, we are on the National Lunch Program. The majority of our participants in the free program and the majority of our labor comes from the other buildings. Therefore, to get credit for it and to get the reimbursement, we actually have to move the distribution site from the high school to one of the other buildings. We've worked with Airmark and we've worked with our principals. Mr. Reed and Mrs. Ross have been so kind to allow EC1 to be our serving site. Primarily, that's the building that has the cafeteria closest to where they would deliver to the bus lanes. We still have very high participation in that program. So we will be communicating that change to our families tomorrow. We're not going into that level of detail, but that is why we have to change the site so we can get the reimbursement. Mr. McDermott felt pretty strongly we needed to be reimbursed for the food service program. So, administrative coaching. During our goals conferences with our principals, all of us had discussions about doing administrative coaching for this school year. This is a tough job, as we highlighted earlier in this report, and just having that extra unbiased set of eyes to talk us through some of the issues we're dealing with can always be helpful. I know I've participated in coaching many times and pretty regularly throughout my career. So principals are in discussions as we speak with Big River Group, Bruce Miles from Big River Group. And we still have to have discussions before we move forward with that, because we certainly want our principals to be comfortable and be a part of that decision if we use that. One thing I do want to disclose to the board, if we should select Big River Group as who we do the administrative coaching with, I do need to disclose that I've been a consultant for Big River Group 3 times through my career. Nothing to do with administrative coaching. It's been with district strategic planning, where I've helped school districts on strategic plans. The last time I did that was in January of 2019, and do not have any work planned for the immediate future. I have my hands full here and then some. So I don't see that happening anytime in the future if it ever happens again. There is no personal benefit or gain to me, and I have contacted the district attorney or district council just to be sure that there is no conflict of interest, and his advice was there was no conflict of interest, but I did need to disclose that to the school board. I'll pause there if there's any questions or concerns. Being none, just highlight the collaboration with the Rochester Education Association. We met last month prior to the board meeting just to discuss any concerns we would have with moving forward. Today we met again with all officers and building reps, and we talked about what's going well, what can be improved, and what we need to do together and what we need to put in place to continue to move forward. I thought it was a very positive meeting. We went and covered quite a bit of things. Didn't solve any issues today, but we did agree that we needed to have these meetings more regularly. For the time being, with as fast as things are adapting and some of the challenges we're trying to meet, we've agreed to meet every other week. We're going to meet on Monday afternoons every other week with the officers and the reps. So it was a good meeting, productive, positive. Our teachers have interest in doing the best they can to serve our students. So I thought it was a really, really productive meeting today. And with that, I'll just end on a positive. You know, the challenges have been a lot this year, but the collaborative work of everyone in our schools and our community just really can't be overstated. And having the students, though these last couple weeks, everybody's exhausted in the schools, it's been worth it to have our kids back in school. It's been really nice to see them, have them back here. Our buildings feel like there's a sense of normalcy. Even though it looks different, we're doing things differently. It's great to have the kids back in the buildings. I'll open it up to any questions.
Back on administrative coaching, what does that amount to? Is it a few hours with or once a session with everybody, or is it individuals, or is it
It's going to be
one-on-one?
individual. It'll be individual between the consultant and the principal with report and feedback from me. I can provide some detailed information to the board what that will look like once we get it ironed out. We've talked less is more. I don't think it's going to be something we want to be doing every week with a weekly meeting, so we're talking monthly or even quarterly. That's the feedback I'm waiting to hear from principals after they have some of their meetings, and to talk about how they liked it or what they envision going forward. But this year, less is more,
Yeah,
because we have our hands full.
My point was, I thought we got all we can handle,
Yep.
and if this helps, that's good, but yet it takes time out of something else you could do.
Yep.
There's always one more thing you could do before you leave every day.
Yes.
I have a question. I'm not backing up on agenda items, but I'm going to back up from yours, Mr. Cox, to Mrs. Keller's, because I had told you I do have a question, and I want to give you a chance to answer that. And I saw that there is a curriculum and instruction council that you reported on. So I was just wondering if you could give us a little more information on who's on that, how long they serve on it, right when the fan kicks in.
All right, so the Curriculum and Instruction Council was actually established back in 1993, just to give you all an idea. And we actually updated basically the procedures, rules, who composes the actual Curriculum and Instruction Council back in 2016. So when I moved over to the district office. So with that being said, basically our building principals request volunteers from each of their buildings to participate on Curriculum and Instruction Council. And basically what that looks like, we want to make sure that we have a well-represented group of all of our teaching staff, as well as administration present. And so we have teachers from each of the elementary, intermediate school, junior high, and high school that cover all of those bases. I guess that's the best way to put it. With that being said, we do meet a minimum of 4 times a year, but I can tell you over the past, now we're entering the 5th year that I've been at the district office, we're typically meeting very regularly. A lot of times it was monthly for the work we were trying to achieve. Grades K through 6, we actually have 5 members. Grades 7 through 12, also 5 members. As far as the number of administration individuals that are located on this council, it is the superintendent or designee. So I have served in the role as a leader on the council, and then we have an additional 2 administrators that are a part of that. We also have a student council representative and a parent representative, which has been just wonderful to have that well-rounded group working towards making curriculum adjustments across the district. It also, we focus a great deal on professional development as well. And then as far as terms go, our teaching staff in grades K through 12 can serve a 3-year term. With that being said, we have had instances where staff have not been able to serve in 3 years, but we also have staff that have served longer than 3 years. So it's been wonderful because then we work to rotate people off so we don't lose everybody at one time. So we have that knowledge and that history there, which is so important as we continue to work through things. And that's pretty much what the Curriculum Council is composed of. Are there any other specific questions? I hope that gives you a window in, but it's a wonderful group to work with, and they have worked really, really hard for years on end now, so
Thank you.
thanks.
Okay. We are moving on to old business. Updates and discussion of return to learning plans. Mr. Cox, do you want to begin our discussion?
Sure. Since, I believe, July or August, maybe at the latest, I've had fairly lengthy reports on return to learning, so I tried to keep this month much more brief because we've done a lot over the last few months and especially over the last month with starting with our hybrid instruction plan. So I wanted to hit a couple high points, a couple talking points of information for you, but then also open the floor for any discussion and questions that you may have, because we just haven't had the opportunity since we are last in person. It's been a few months, and the virtual board meetings just don't lend themselves to good dialogue and back and forth. As I've mentioned now a few times here, we've been engaged in hybrid instruction at 50% attendance for the last 2 weeks. We're on week number 3. Our teachers, administration, students, parents, our support staff are all working very hard to make this work and to continue to move forward. And let me tell you, it's hard. It's very, very difficult. That being said, it is worth it, and it's a step in the right direction to try to continue to get students in school as much as possible and as safely as possible. I want to touch on our COVID positive cases. As you're well aware, once we started going in the hybrid model, we're going to start seeing COVID positive cases that we're dealing with here at the school. Now let me be clear, we're not seeing COVID positives because we're in school. We're seeing the COVID positives because it's how we track it and how we get the information. We knew whenever we went on the hybrid model, we would start having COVID positives, and as a result, we would have close contact quarantines, which are equally, if not even more problematic than the actual positives, and in some cases even more problematic, depending on how that close contact, or if it's a family member of a close contact. Whenever we were in the remote model, we would, one, obviously have less students here, but two, we would not be informed if there was a COVID positive test, so we didn't necessarily know about them unless they were our student athletes. Now that they're in school, we do get informed on the COVID positive test, which results in the communication and results in the contact tracing in school. To date, with our COVID positives that we've had and we've been communicating with our community, none are believed to have happened as a result of transmission within district facilities. They've all came via our when we've done our contract tracing, we've been able to trace these events to things that happened outside of school. That's not to say that people are doing things irresponsibly, people are doing things they should not be doing. It's just a fact of the matter of people spend a lot more time outside of our schools than they do inside our school. We get them a very small percentage of the time, and even more so when we're only seeing them 2 days a week. We have the quarantine and the close contact. Thus far, our individuals who have been quarantined for close contact, and we have quite a few right now as we speak out as close contacts, none of those individuals have ended up testing positive for COVID. That being said, that is an IDPH rule that we have that has very little room for flexibility. We do our best to maintain social distancing, but it's not feasible at all times. If we have a full class or a half full class, or depending on what the circumstances are, we social distance to the greatest extent possible. So we cannot always adhere to the 6 feet, but we do that as much as possible. The more kids in school, the less possible that's going to be. The other point of interest, we have very little to no help from our health officials at the state or local level. We are doing our own contact tracing, and the guidance that we follow is oftentimes competing, if not absolutely contradictory, between the CDC, the Illinois Department of Public Health, and even locally. We are, and why I wanted to highlight the nurses, we are doing all of our contact tracing on our own. It's extremely, extremely difficult, and we're also faced with solving issues and making decisions and health-related decisions that, quite frankly, I don't feel like any school should be doing on their own. This is not a Rochester unique issue. This is a state of Illinois. It likely is a nationwide issue. I've not paid that close of attention to what school districts nationally are dealing with, but I know they're dealing with some of the similar things. An example I could give you is, I was asked the question today by one of our teachers when we met, if we have a metric that tells us when and how we would have to go remote. The only metric we have today is the IDPH guideline for what an outbreak is. 2 positives at the same time in the same area would be an outbreak. Outside of that, we have no other metrics. So if we wanted to come up with a metric of X% of students quarantined or X% of staff quarantined, we're tasked with doing that ourselves, which is not an easy task. The last piece on the COVID positives that I wanted to touch on is we can't do this alone. It is a community effort. We have kids in school, and if we want to keep kids in school, we need everybody to do their part. Again, we're not telling people they shouldn't live their lives or do things to have a life and to be social. We just need people to be smart about that, wear their masks, keep their distance, wash their hands, as simple as that. We need everybody's help to keep our kids in school. Our at-risk population, a few pieces that we're looking at right now. One of our highest priorities are students who may have special needs that are not being met in the remote model, or students who may not be participating as a result of being in the remote model, or are failing or not meeting certain academic criteria. So here are a couple things that are going to be happening over the next few weeks. On November 2nd, our pre-K, we already have our pre-K program going right now 5 days a week. We're going to expand that to a full program on November 2nd. We have the 3rd off for Election Day, and then they'll be going in full after that. On November 4th, that would be the Wednesday after Election Day, we plan to start our students with special needs, with the exception of speech. Students with just speech services are not included in this. But students with special needs are English language learners or students in need of services like OT, PT, would be starting 4 days per week, going full 4 days. We're beginning conversations, but not ready to make any recommendations yet. This would likely be something we would talk about at the next board meeting, is the beginning of the conversations about doing a Monday school. Monday school would be for students in need of extra support or intervention. It's not to be confused with teachers would be required to have these students in class. It would be more of a discussion from the teacher and recommendation from teachers and principals of students who may be in need of extra intervention and support, like students in need of Tier 3 services, students who be meeting with a title teacher, meeting with their special education teacher, meeting with their own teacher, a paraprofessional. We're still working through what that could possibly look like. That would be on Monday mornings for 3 hours that students would have the opportunity to do that. The other piece that we're beginning conversations about are our students who are elective remote learners who aren't making it. They're either not participating for various reasons. Sometimes we know those reasons, sometimes we do not, or they're not meeting certain academic criteria. If students are not meeting the academic criteria or are not participating, we're exploring options of how to mandatory have them attend in person 4 days per week for 3 weeks at a time until they got their academics back up and could go back to the remote learning level. If there is an actual medical reason that they could not be here, we would work through the same process like we do homebound. At the moment, students who have a medical need to not be here are not the same students that are not participating in the program. So those are some things that we're engaged in discussions, but certainly not ready to make any recommendations or decisions on. With each step forward we make, it just presents a whole myriad of new challenges. We knew when we went from remote to hybrid, we would be met with a host of challenges, from having positives, having quarantines, dealing with that. We're seeing an increased demand of teachers trying to balance in-person versus remote, the elective, the hybrid, the in-person. It's very, very difficult. We knew that challenge would grow. Our plans continue to adapt and change as a result of that, but what doesn't change is the ultimate goal, and our goal is to get kids back in school and keep kids learning. Now, what needs to happen for that to take place? No one person has that answer. It's going to take continued conversations, continued collaboration. We are engaged with the teachers about what needs to be done to move forward, as I highlighted today. We also sent out a thought exchange to our teachers this afternoon at 3:30, or actually to all of our staff at 3:30, to really gauge their perceptions on what needs to take place to move forward and keep us moving forward. Just anecdotally, walking around and talking with teachers, I'm excited to look at the thought exchange, but just talking to them, they're tired. This is really hard. I talked with one today who said, I just feel ineffective because trying to get their kids to engage in the remote model and something we're learning. One unexpected thing we've learned is how quiet the kids are when they come back. You could walk through the halls today of this school and not realize, tomorrow, today we didn't have kids in. You could walk through the halls of this school tomorrow and quite frankly not realize we have kids in school. It's that quiet. Kids just aren't talking for whatever reason, if it's the mask, if it's the new procedures, but teachers are trying to pull that out of them. So it is just a really difficult and interesting time to be a teacher, but our teachers are working through it and really trying their best to work with our students. The next step that we're looking at, other than our at-risk, is to look at how we can get to our limited remote model, meaning 4 days per week with very limited remote. It would be remote on Mondays or remote for kids who are elective remote learners. If you were to ask me 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I was ready to say we can give this a try in the space between Thanksgiving and Christmas. That's a nice 4-week block for us to give that a try, to get kids in person. Learning what we've learned in hybrid and learning some of the challenges we've learned and some of the changes or accommodations that we need to make for our students and teachers, I'm not sure I would be ready to make that recommendation. The other piece is the changing health conditions. We are going through a surge right now. So we're engaged in conversations. We will bring this back up at the next month's board meeting, but certainly I'm not ready to say, hey, let's go 4 days per week right after Thanksgiving, because we need to look at some different models. The other piece in the discussions we had today about those models is really looking at our elementary and high school in two different silos, because there are just complete differences of what we're able to do with those. We also have a much higher rate of remote learners at the high school, which presents a whole different set of challenges for our high school teachers. We are at 21% now, and likely, I'd be surprised if by the end of the week we weren't hovering at 25%.
At the high school.
At the high school. Yeah, the elementary school numbers are much, much lower. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
How many remote learners are not participating?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but I can get that information to you. Unless principals, do you have anything anecdotally that you see of remote learners that are not participating?
It's how many, Mr. Utoni asked, how many remote students are not participating, are not engaging?
I don't think it's a matter of, mentioned that engaging inconsistencies as far as getting along and how long. We do have 100% participation as far as the relation to those connected teachers at different times because of their schedule. So while the participation is there, I'm not so sure that it's that's consistent with the level. So that's why I don't
In the intermediate school, it's probably one or two kids that are not participating. Most of the kids are like that. It is low level.
You might also very low one or two days too. We're seeing more difficulty with kids who are hybrid on their remote days.
Gotcha.
We're seeing a lot of that in high school activity cells. So I know we're reviewing our quarter grades are actually due Wednesday. So we'll be doing a thorough review of all the kids that are completely remote. But I'll be honest, we've had a lot of kids just going over the last 3 or 4 days. So it really has, it would be hard to break them apart. I mean, we're going to have some kids that are not. So we're just staying on top of them, I think, like everyone is.
So a very small number of kids who are remote only and not engaging or participating, but there's a concern for the kids who are hybrid not engaging on their remote days,
Correct.
only attending 2 days and, okay.
The other piece with that, besides just participation, is academic criteria. Just to give 2 examples, D's and F's, students who are failing would be one group of students we would look at. There would be other students maybe with certain academic criteria, like if you had a student who was unable to write their name, a first grade student who couldn't write their name or couldn't perform certain academic skills. We just haven't pinned that down, and we need teacher input and teacher recommendations of what that academic criteria would look like at various grade levels.
You know, and that's just like an example of one more job. I'm trying to talk louder now to make sure you guys can hear, but it's just one more job being added on to administrators or teachers for something that they need to do that normally they aren't. So I know you're cognizant of it, and I think the administrators are too. So I think I'm just in it to say, how can we take a load off in some way? They're not going to do less because they're good teachers. So what help do they need? And I guess I say that to them too, because I think the communication has to come full circle in both directions. So I know Mr. Cox just said he's going to meet with the building reps and the REA officers every 2 weeks. So if teachers or staff have a concern, make sure your building reps are hearing that, or the officers know, speak up so that you can say, I have an idea, or here's what we need, or here's what would help, or I just drowned. I don't know. Like share it, and let's make sure our communication is going in every direction through here so that.
Maybe something that can be pushed out tomorrow is to really encourage 100% feedback on that thought exchange.
The thought exchange.
Because it is something that the district office and the board pays close attention to.
Good point.
Yeah, exactly. It will help the teams, the multiple teams, solve problems and find answers and, make the best out of what we have. Any other comments or questions? All right. Thanks for presenting. All right, we'll move on to new business. Discussion of board recommendations on 2020 IASB resolutions, and you should have a copy of those at your seat. Mrs. Reynolds, do you want to speak on that?
I don't really want to read through all of them.
Please
I
don't.
tried to give you guys a brief, overview of them before, but now you've got the details. And if anybody read through it, if you have strong feelings about any of them, especially if you disagree with ISB, the committee's recommendation, I'd like to hear it. Because as I said before, I plan to vote along. Every vote went the way I voted, when I was at the committee in August, so.
Good. Thanks for your representation and work with that. All right, no questions or comments? Okay. Consideration and possible action to approve memorandum of understanding with Hazel Health for pediatric telehealth services. And Mr. Cox, will you speak on this a bit more?
Yes. First, I'm not ready to make a recommendation this evening. We placed this on the agenda this way in the event we were able to have a meeting with Hazel Health today with our nurses. We weren't able to set that meeting up until next week, on the 26th. And in my discussions with Hazel Health, it's a 4-week setup time anyway. So if we weren't able to meet until next week, we would be looking at late November, mid to late November before we had that set up and going. So if we wait until the next school board meeting, we're really looking at second semester. There's not a significant difference there from where our needs are. I would rather have the opportunity to talk with our nurses. They had some questions. I've shared some of the same information with them that I have you, and then they have a little bit more. They have a few questions and concerns. They're not against it, but they're not ready to move forward either, so we need to have that meeting. With that being said, Hazel Health provides pediatric telehealth services in partnership with the district. I put a pretty good list of the items that they would provide, from the health cart, the technology, and the medical cart with over-the-counter medications and supplies at no cost to the district, and the secure messaging platform. The biggest benefit of Hazel Health would be for our families who don't have access to medical care. We do have families that do struggle to get access to medical care, or any families who are on Medicaid. That's the biggest benefit, but it's not the only benefit. Families who do have access to medical care may elect to utilize telehealth services depending on what the issue is that's going on with their child, especially right now during COVID. They will assist with an alternative diagnosis. So using myself for an example, if one of my children got sent to the nurse's office for, watery eyes, scratchy throat, runny nose, and I told the nurse, well, it's allergies, they get this every year, and the nurse asked me, do you have an alternative diagnosis? My answer is no. In normal circumstances, my child has to go home until I can get into the doctor to get that alternative diagnosis or a negative test. In this particular case, the Hazel Health doctors could work with our nurses and my primary care physician to help get that alternative diagnosis, or if it's not appropriate to do an alternative diagnosis, to send the child home. The other piece is anytime a child has to be sent home, not our close contacts, but any child with COVID-like symptoms has to be sent home, the health team and the physicians from Hazel Health will make that call to the families, not our nurses, which is a load that could be very helpful for them. The other piece with this is the potential, though it's not set up yet, for behavioral telehealth. The behavioral telehealth could be a game changer for everybody nationwide, but specifically here in Illinois. But they don't have that set up yet. It's something we're in discussions with them on. And then the other piece, the no cost. What's the catch? No cost to the district or anything like that. How do they get their money? They bill via Medicaid, and they bill via family's insurance. A student or a family cannot be forced to participate. It's their choice. So another reason to have the nurses involved and know what's going on, because the program will only be as effective as our nurses' involvement and knowledge of it. So again, if my own children were sent to the office, it's one of those nurses' office, health office, and my child may need to go home, there could be a choice of you can have this telehealth service here versus coming, picking your child up, taking them home, and getting them to the physician. A family who's on Medicaid, on average, that child misses 4 days of school. With telehealth services, on average, 90% of them go back the same day. The pharmacies that are cooperative with this also will deliver medicine straight to the children's home. So something we'd like to explore more, but aren't ready to make that recommendation just yet.
I sent some comments to Christy. I also emailed you one that I had left off the list, and then a couple others that I had. One is how did we pick Hazel Health? Are there others out there doing this? Did they approach us? I'm just curious about that. And then in reading through that contract, they're clear that there's no cost to Rochester as a district. What I'm worried about is the potential for them providing services to a child that appears to be insured, doesn't qualify for Medicaid for some reason, their insurance doesn't cover it, and then we've sent a child to have services performed, and then that family ends up getting the bill. Rochester, the district, doesn't get the bill, but they then send that bill to collections on, and I would like to see something very, very clear in the contract that says under no circumstances are they going to charge any of our students or any of our parents for any services provided through this program. I don't want any possibility that there's people coming knocking on the district office door saying, why did I get this?
And I know too, and I agree with you that I didn't think that piece was clear in talking with them. They cannot see a child without parent involvement and parent permission.
I get that, but if we suggest to a parent that they should do this, and we tell the parent that it's going to be covered, because that's probably what the nurses would say, because 90% of the time it is, or 99% of the time it is, and then if for some reason it's not covered because that family no longer qualifies for Medicaid, for example, and then that parent then is turned into collections because they didn't pay the bill, I just wanted explicit in the contract that under no circumstances will they charge or attempt to charge any child or any parent or the district for any services provided. In other words, if this isn't covered by insurance, they're eating it.
Correct. In this specific year, with charges this year, typically Medicaid's covered. If it's billing insurance, there is a $20 copay. This particular school year, there is no copay. They're waiving all copays nationwide because of COVID. But in the future, there would be a $20 copay to all families that were non-Medicaid.
If they choose to sign up for it, though, right?
If they choose to sign up,
They choose
correct.
to sign up for it. But then, if a parent thinks all they're paying is $20, and then their insurance gets canceled, or their insurance denies coverage, or they thought that they were Medicaid, but all of a sudden they're not Medicaid because of a means test that they pass or fail, depending on how you look at it, and then they get a bill, someone's going to be unhappy.
We'll engage in that when we meet with them. We're meeting with them on the 26th, so we'll engage in that. And also, before we sign any agreement, we'll have our own counsel look it over too. This has not been vetted completely by Dennis yet.
These types of programs worry me. Somebody's making money on it.
Do they have references here in Illinois?
Yes, they do. I can get those.
How did they come to us then?
I received the recommendation through a district in Southern Illinois that was using them, and also had met them at a meeting I attended. Engaged in the conversation, and thought it was a good opportunity for us to provide some health services and get our kids in school or keep them in school just a little bit quicker, if families chose to take advantage of it, obviously. Just another option for families. They are Illinois-based. They're based out of, I think, Naperville, maybe. They're in the Collar counties.
So I'm assuming this would be information that would go home with registration and all of that for families to opt in or to clearly opt out?
Yes. Not just registration, you could do it
But
at any
throughout,
time of
yeah.
year. They do. I had talked with them about, in this particular community, we would have people who would have questions, very good questions. There would need to be some extra education. They talked about even doing a video kind of town hall education type thing with families to see if they wanted to use that or not here.
And do we have the space to accommodate a privacy for that consultation?
This year we do, because we had to make the spaces for COVID.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. We'll see this again next month.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, one way or the other.
Right.
Depends, if we decide to move forward, we'll come with a recommendation to move forward. If we decide not, we'll bring that back up and just discuss the reasons why.
Do you
Good.
need one of us to officially table it, or?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, because I said at the beginning, I was not ready to make a
Okay.
recommendation. I put that on there just in the event that we were able to have some
Yeah.
more conversations with our nurses today. And then just prior to the meeting, I received a couple emails from nurses with some questions and concerns. So certainly, I don't want to have you all approve it or approve it pending further investigation, because it looks like it's already been done, and that's certainly not the intent.
Okay. All right, moving on. We have discussion of the College Now program. Late last spring, the student fee for the College Now program was brought to the board. Because we had already had registration or class selection for the next year, and parents and students were committed to their schedules and what they had picked for this academic year, we decided to, or we committed to addressing it this fall. And so we need to look at the plans and the fees for the 21-22 academic year, discuss the cost to the student, costs for the district, and the number of enrollments since initiation, and possible recommendations for changes to this program.
So I included just a little historical summary. Mr. McDermott put this together for us, so thank you, Bob, for that. But in FY19, we had 73 students. The 2018-19 school year, we had 73 students participating in the program in its first year. That's grown to currently 149 students participating. The district picks up 90% of that cost. Correct, Bob? 90%?
Approximately, yes.
Approximately. So the cost to the district in FY19 was $106,945, and the cost to the families, student and parent, was $14,600. Moving forward to today, the cost to the district that covers for College Now is $223,792. The family cost is $59,600. So the discussions that we would have administratively, we know our teachers have concerns about the amount of dollars that's being put toward College Now. I think as a district, I have that same concern. We are running a significant deficit this year. This is a program, and a very nice program for our students. It's a nice opportunity for our students, but it's certainly a very niche opportunity for students. One of the things that we could look at, if we look at changing the fee structure or putting more of that fee to the family and students can certainly still go to College Now and have that opportunity, but it may be more of the parent and student responsibility to pay the bill for that, if not completely that responsibility. One area I would like to look at and have further discussion on, though, are any at-risk students who would not potentially have the opportunity to go to college or take college courses because of finances or financial situations. That might be a caveat the board wants to look at. I do know that there's also opportunities to try to allocate some of those dollars into any of our micro-credentialing or into any education for teachers who could teach some of these courses locally. The other piece of that discussion that we need to have is what happens when students go and they don't succeed. We have no provisions within College Now right now as it stands. A student goes and drops out. We have nothing that says you have to pay us back. Likewise, if a student goes and gets a D or an F in the program, there's nothing that says you have to pay the district back for that program if they're not successful in it. Lincoln Land, they still collect the money whether the student passes or not. They don't have the same vested interest that our teachers here at the high school do.
I think another piece is I think there's value in having the student body present on our campus. And when we create incentives for our student body to go be educated elsewhere, it undermines what we're trying to do here as a school board, which is to make Rochester a really good place to go to school. With that said, my kids will benefit from College Now program, and it's subsidized by other families. Other families are paying taxes to send my kids to college, which I certainly benefit from, but I don't think it's necessarily right. So I'm in favor of at least curtailing some of the incentives across the board, even recognizing that there are some families that may not be able to afford a traditional college for financial reasons, but there's a lot of programs out there for those folks. So
Speak up so they can.
Okay,
hear you
I'm
in the
strongly in favor of increasing the fee. I think covering 90% is too much. I disagree with one thing, though. To me, College Now is an incentive to be at Rochester. The fact that they have this opportunity, and yes, there's a few other schools in the area that offer it too, but not every school does. So this is an incentive to be a Rochester student, getting the chance to do the College Now classes. But I want them to feel responsible for it rather than feeling like it's just a free handout to get free college credit. At the same time, we've acknowledged in the past we are saving some money because we're not hiring the teachers that could teach, the dual credit as much since they're able to get it this way. So I do think we should cover some of it.
I'd like to have a greater understanding of the impact of the College Now on the high school experience. I think Mr. Goebel talked about, many of our kids thankfully will have the opportunity to go to college, but I want to make sure the kids have the opportunity to have the high school experience. And sending, a segment of the kids out of the campus really, I'd like to understand what impact that has on the high school experience, the selection of classes, and the opportunities for the kids to have kind of AP advanced classes or other experiences in the high school.
Mr. Ashball, can you hear that?
Mostly,
All right.
the heaters are fine.
Well, we will have discussions with the high school staff, teachers, and
Absolutely.
administration between now and next month to answer some of these questions. That's why I wanted to put this on the agenda this
Yeah,
evening
there's
to
no
hear what
motion
questions you
or
have.
movement on this
Correct.
tonight, just discussion to.
Mr. Ashbaum, Mr. Carley's basically asking for the history of why we ended up going this direction. I think you have lots of things you can add to that.
I mean, it's just something Dr. Bertrand and I mean, schools were moving towards how to get kids more college opportunities. And I will tell you, as we move forward, we're having a tough time continuing some of our dual credit. I've lost Sarah with anatomy. I lost the chemistry. This will be the last year I have a physics. So I'm losing the opportunities in my building. So I think we either need to train our staff to that level or look elsewhere. I will tell you one stat, this is just something so you can think what you're thinking. In the first 3 years of this program, 70% of the kids who participated were not in the top 30% of their class. So it's not like we're just reaching the what I want to say, your upper level kids. These are a lot of kids that maybe are deciding whether to go to college, and this is a great chance for them to get out there and try it. I do agree we have to give them something, an incentive, because last spring proved tough when we went remote. But I think there has to be some buy-in from the parents too, and the kids, that they have to do well enough out there, or we're not, offering it. But we do pull kids back if they don't do well. But like Mr. Cox said, there's no monetary or no buy-in to it. So, and I will tell you personally, and you can talk to anyone around here, I've got kids that have gone to college and have not had to do a whole year of college because of this program. So even if the parents are paying more up front, they're still saving a ton in the long run of what they're getting. I mean, it's an outstanding program. I mean, we fight with Lincoln Land. You guys know we've been through battles with them a couple times, but yeah, it's a great program, and I think there's maybe some kids that go to college just because they do it now and actually get out there with not this semester because it's pretty remote, but they may go to college just because of that. So
Lincoln Land's most recent magazine actually featured 2 of our students. There were stories on one that got their associate's degree 1 semester out of high school, and the other one is going to be able to finish a 4-year degree in 3 years because of the Lincoln Land classes. And one thing, he mentioned battles with Lincoln Land. I don't know how much you were told during school board orientation, but multiple times we've had teachers that Lincoln Land accredited to teach dual credit courses, and they've suddenly come back and said, no, that teacher needs 9 more hours, even though they've been teaching it for 6, 7, 8, 9 years. Yeah. And so it's not just that we lose physically, a teacher leaves us that was qualified. We have qualified teachers that suddenly Lincoln decides to change the rules on us.
Well, right. And there's some territorial warfare going on there, where Lincoln Land wants to make sure that it's their employees providing those services, earning those salaries, at the expense of Rochester, our bargaining unit.
Yeah.
And I can see why, as a teacher, you'd be frustrated that your students are getting peeled off to be sent somewhere else.
Yeah.
So
just to be clear, though, did I interrupt you?
No.
To be clear, though, the classes that they can take at Lincoln Land through college now are not the equivalent of the AP and the dual credit classes here. So when you say you won't be having physics again after this year, that's just an opportunity now gone completely, correct?
correct.
So it isn't that they can get that, what is being lost here, they can't pick it up out
Not
there.
necessarily, correct, because the classes that, when the College Now program started, we identified classes that would go towards an associate's.
Yeah.
But also what worked into the schedule was 3-hour classes. You can't do a 4-hour class. So like a physics is a 4-hour class. So some of those classes are not available through the College Now program, correct.
So the kids that are wanting, and I fully admit, my children have not taken part of College Now, in large part because they are wanting to get those AP dual credit 6-weight classes, and you can't be in College Now and get that because they're only offered in the afternoon, which is the same time that College Now is offered. So
The schedule gets tight when you
Yeah.
get some of those upper level classes, yes.
So I certainly
But I will tell you that honestly, the rigor of a lot of our classes here is way higher than the College Now, because like I'm saying, currently the seniors are taking an introductory sociology class and an introductory art class. Both of them help get an associate's, but they're very introductory classes. The kid that's taking calculus here is not an introductory class. I mean, it's not. And so maybe that's why a lot of our kids aren't those top 30% kids that are getting the opportunity to earn some college.
And I don't want it to sound like I'm against College Now. I certainly see the benefit. I guess I would just want to say I hope that there's a balancing of what we're offering for the kids who benefit from it, but we're also not letting out or letting down the kids here who need the more rigorous classes and want those, and to lose those because of College Now.
Well, so one of the things, so you know, we made sure that all of the classes at College Now are not classes that we can teach here. So we're not doubling up on anything college credit wise. If we could teach it here as a college credit, we would. So,
And in a sense, that's similar to CACC,
Yeah.
which, you know, no one suggests that CACC is stealing our students. So it's just tough to find the edge of that knife where it's
Well,
perfect.
I think it's not necessarily about the program per se. I've not heard anybody say we should not have College Now as an option for students. It's how much money the district puts toward that optional program.
And that was my point, is to remove some of the incentive to solve some of the problems. We're not going to make it perfect, but if we remove some of the financial incentives, then maybe students who weren't taking it as seriously as they should because they weren't paying for it will start taking it more seriously. And students that maybe weren't interested in taking art but took it because they thought it was easier and it got them out of the school, maybe wouldn't do that if they had to pay full price. That's, again, I don't know I have no way of knowing if removing the incentives will have the effect that I'm looking for. I just think that it makes it more likely to have.
Yeah.
Mr. Grable, so you know, all the classes at College Now will go towards their associate's degree. So we're not letting them like take anything that would not count towards an associate's, like earning. So if a kid does it their junior and senior year, they're earning 24 of their 60 credits that they would need towards an associate, just doing the program both years.
Right, and I'm not against it. I didn't want it to sound that way. I just,
No, but I wouldn't let them just go out, so you know, we wouldn't just let them go out to take whatever class, so. And I think some schools do that. They open it up and let them go take anything that's open, and I think we were more structured along the lines that we wanted them to be working towards their degree.
I did want to add one more positive as a parent that had, my daughter only did her senior year out there, and she's definitely one of the ones that's not top 30%. And despite, at first I thought it was good for her because she got used to having to find classes on a college campus, albeit a small one, but yes, having to navigate through different buildings, and then, Iversley Park, and I, go and answer to a professor that I didn't have access to like I do a Rochester teacher, that she was just totally going to have to learn to be independent and, advocate for herself when she needed help. I thought was a very positive experience too before heading off to a four-year college.
Yeah, and I want to be clear in my comments. I'm not against the program. I think it's a wonderful option for our students. I guess as we talk about it more, I'd like to understand the trade-offs and what impact it has on the building, the teachers, and kind of the opportunities for the kids that elect not to go off, and then also just making sure the finances work out for the school and the community. But it's a great program, and I've certainly heard great things from folks that have gone. My question is really what the trade-offs are in the school. Does it limit the opportunities for kids that choose not to go because there aren't as many kids in the classes? And I just want to have a greater understanding of that.
It does not limit the opportunities here. That's for positive. What it does limit is if a kid does choose College Now, then maybe they might have to make a decision here whether they take calculus or Spanish 4. But kids have to make choices every year about what they want to take.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, even some of the kids that stay here and take 8 classes, sometimes something doesn't work. A certain combination won't work in a schedule, and it's hard, but we're like one of those, we're not big, we're not small.
Right.
So we offer as much as we can, but when you get to a certain point, you don't offer enough or whatever. But it does not really affect like what the kids can take here at all. And that's why I think it reaches some of those kids that aren't worried about, they're not taking the AP, English and the AP history and that, they're not. And those classes probably have more rigor than the College Now does. So I think they stay here and do that with us. So.
Thank you, Mr. Ackwell.
We do have to have a decision on this at the November board meeting for scheduling purposes, correct? You need to know in December, correct?
yeah, definitely, I mean, if it's gonna affect the program, correct, yes.
So we'll come back to this again next month. You're having more conversations with administrators and staff and everyone else, okay?
Maybe have some revised fee recommendations for us?
We'll bring a recommendation and we'll bring alternative, at least one, if not two, alternative recommendations. So I'll give you recommendation number one and then give you, here's the alternative, so you have a couple things to look at.
Perfect.
Something I could add, that would be 7% of our students involved last year. We had 149 out of 2,100, so that's about 7% of our students are involved in that. So that's the impact.
Well, not really, because it's two classes. That's out of juniors and seniors combined.
Correct.
Look at it two different ways, yeah.
This just shows
So it wouldn't quite be
149.
70%, is all I'm saying.
Yeah,
149 out of
2,100.
roughly 350, right? 3 or 350?
Yeah, you have to cut it.
Yeah.
Depends on which grade you're looking at. You're gonna add that junior class that has 50 extra students.
Well, then it's even
That's
less
where-
than,
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
bomb.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks for the discussion. Okay, we need to look at setting a date for the special meeting, November 16th. The III conference is moved to a virtual and condensed format. So with this move and our ever-changing circumstances at play currently, Mr. Cox thought it would be good to consider adding a November board meeting to our calendar. I agree.
Probably necessary.
Yeah, I think so. Anything else?
I'm smirking.
Yeah? Anything else to add to that explanation?
No,
Okay.
I just feel typically, we school boards meet monthly and before I was hired here, the board had elected not to meet because of the school board conference. It's been canceled. We have the space, and with so many dynamics and things changing, I find it prudent that we go ahead and do that. And we do have some business items we would need to discuss with College Now anyway. So I just recommend we go ahead and do it on the regular meeting date. We do have to call it a special meeting since it wasn't regularly scheduled, but it'll be treated just like a regular meeting.
And that would be November 16th.
6:30.
Yeah, 6:30.
Just note, this is a minor detail, but one technical Roberts rule that would be different during the special meeting is that nothing can be added. It's just the meeting agenda and that's it. Whereas tonight, somebody could add something. We necessarily couldn't take action on it, but we could add something. So on November, once it's out, the agenda is the agenda.
Precise.
Yep.
Okay. So with that recommendation, we do need a motion to set a special meeting for November 16th.
So moved.
Thank you. Mrs. Reynolds?
Second.
Thank you. I think I heard Mrs. Johnson there. I heard a couple, but. Okay, call the roll, please, Katie.
Mr. Goebel?
Yes.
Mr. Utoni?
Yes.
Mrs. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Carly?
Yes.
Dr. Magulius?
Yes.
Mr. File?
Yes.
All right. Okay. A big thank you. I wish I could say more. I wish we could all do more or say more, but thanks to everyone,
Thank you.
all of our administrators and teachers and staff and everybody who's working so hard. Thanks for all your work.
Don't we need to make a motion to go into closed session?
Yeah, I need to make a motion first. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session for the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second?
Thank you. Call the roll.
Mrs. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Utoni?
Yes.
Mr. Goebel?
Yes.
Mr. Carly?
Yes.
Mr. File?
Yes.
Dr. Magulius?
Yes.
God, that wasn't supposed to be an insult.
We're good? Okay, so I will entertain a motion to approve the personnel report.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. File.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Yatoni. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Yatoni?
Yes.
Dr. Magulius?
Yes.
Mr. Carly?
Yes.
Mr. Goebel?
Yes.
Mr. File?
Yes.
Mrs. Reynolds?
Yes.
Anything else to come before the board? Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Thank you all.